3 nights before my 65th birthday, my late wife Margaret came to me in a dream and said, "Don't swallow those pills she gives you, Harold. Promise me." I woke up gasping, my chest tight, the sheets damp with sweat, because the woman who had moved into my home 6 months ago had been giving me pills every single night. And when I finally had them tested, I understood why my body had been failing me. Welcome to Shattered Vengeance. I share stories of betrayal, justice, and survival. If these stories move you, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe and like this video. Now, let me tell you what happened to me. My name is Harold McMillan, and I live in a small town called Carleton Place, about 45 minutes southwest of Ottawa. I spent 38 years working as a millwright at the paper mill before they offered me early retirement. My wife, Margaret, and I had planned to spend our golden years traveling, maybe finally taking that trip to the Maritimes she always talked about. We were going to see Peggy's Cove, drive the Cabot Trail, eat lobster until we couldn't move. But 3 years ago, Margaret had a stroke. She was making her famous butter tarts in the kitchen, and I heard a crash. By the time the ambulance got her to the Ottawa Civic Hospital, half her brain had already gone dark. She held on for 11 days in the ICU before she squeezed my hand one last time and slipped away. Those first months after her death were the darkest of my life. Our son David, who works as a contractor in Kingston, came up every weekend to check on me. Our daughter Melissa, who lives in Vancouver with her husband and 2 kids, called every night. But when they left, when the phone went silent, I was alone in a house full of memories. I stopped cooking proper meals. I stopped going to the Legion on Thursday nights. I let the garden that Margaret had tended for 40 years go to weeds. My doctor told me I was depressed, gave me some pills, and suggested I might benefit from having someone come by to help with daily tasks. That's when Sandra Thornton entered my life. She came through an agency that specialized in home care for seniors. 52 years old, she said, though she looked younger. Blonde hair, always pulled back neat. A warm smile that reminded me, in some small way, of Margaret. She had nursing credentials from a college in Toronto and references that checked out perfectly. At first, she came 3 times a week. She'd make sure I ate properly, helped me organize my medications, tidied up the house. She was patient, kind, and easy to talk to. After Margaret's death, I had forgotten what it felt like to have someone ask about my day and actually listen to the answer. Within 2 months, she had increased her visits to daily. By the 4th month, she suggested it might be more practical if she simply moved into the spare bedroom. That way, she could be there if I needed anything during the night. My heart condition, she reminded me, required monitoring. I agreed. What did I have to lose? The house felt less empty with her in it. Looking back now, I can see how carefully she orchestrated everything. How she isolated me from my routines, from my friends at the Legion, from the neighbors who used to drop by. She was always there, always helpful, always inserting herself between me and the outside world. She managed my medications, organizing them into those little daily pill containers. She handled my mail, sorting through it before I could see it. She answered my phone when I was resting. She drove me to my doctor's appointments and sat in the room with me, speaking on my behalf. My children noticed the changes. David mentioned during one visit that I seemed more tired than usual, more confused. I brushed it off as age catching up with me. Melissa, during a video call, said I looked pale, asked if I was eating enough. Sandra was right there beside me, assuring her that she was taking excellent care of me. The truth was, I had been feeling worse. My hands trembled, my vision blurred at odd moments. I had trouble remembering words, names, dates. I assumed it was grief, depression, the natural decline of a 64-year-old man who had lost his reason for living. I never suspected it was something else entirely. The dream came on a Tuesday night in late October. I had gone to bed early, exhausted as usual. Sandra had given me my nightly pills with a glass of warm milk, same as always. I remember the milk tasted slightly bitter, but she said she had added a bit of honey that had crystallized. I fell asleep quickly, and that's when I saw her. Margaret was standing in the doorway of our bedroom, wearing the blue cardigan I had given her for our 40th anniversary. Her hair was silver, the way it had been in her final years, and her eyes held that look she always got when she was worried about me. "Harold," she said, and her voice was exactly as I remembered it, soft but firm, the voice that had guided me through nearly half a century of marriage. "Listen to me carefully. Don't swallow those pills she gives you. Promise me." I tried to speak, tried to ask her what she meant, but my voice wouldn't come. "Check the pills, Harold. Don't trust her. Promise me." She repeated it 3 times, and each time her voice grew more urgent. Then she began to fade, dissolving into the darkness like morning mist burning off the Rideau River. I woke up with a start, my heart hammering. The clock read 3:47 a. Beside me, the bed was empty. I had been sleeping alone since Margaret's death, of course, but in that moment, her absence felt fresh, raw. I lay there in the darkness, trying to convince myself it was just a dream, just my grieving mind playing tricks. Margaret was gone. She couldn't actually warn me about anything, but her words kept echoing in my head. "Don't swallow those pills she gives you." I got up, moved quietly to the bathroom, and closed the door. My hands were shaking as I turned on the light. There, on the counter, was the pill organizer Sandra had prepared. 7 compartments, 1 for each day, each one containing my blood pressure medication, my cholesterol pill, and a small blue capsule that Sandra said was a vitamin supplement to help with my energy levels. I picked up one of the blue capsules and held it up to the light. It looked ordinary enough, but Margaret's voice wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't take my pills that morning. When Sandra brought them to me with my breakfast, I pretended to swallow them, then slipped them into my napkin when she turned away. I did the same thing at lunch, and again at dinner. By the next morning, something remarkable happened. The fog in my brain began to lift, the trembling in my hands lessened. I felt more alert than I had in months. Coincidence? I told myself. Probably just had a good night's sleep. But I kept hiding the pills. And day by day, I continued to improve. By the end of the week, I felt almost like my old self. I could think clearly. I could remember things. The confusion that had plagued me for months was fading, and that's when the fear set in. Because if stopping those pills was making me better, then what had been in those pills in the first place? I needed to know for certain, but I couldn't let Sandra suspect anything. I waited until Thursday, when Sandra went into town to do the grocery shopping. The moment her car disappeared down the lane, I moved. I went to my bedroom and retrieved the pills I had hidden away. 7 days' worth of those blue capsules. I put them in a small envelope and sealed it. Then I called my son. "David, I need you to come up here, today if you can." He must have heard something in my voice, because he didn't ask questions. "I'll be there in 2 hours, Dad." While I waited, I searched the house. I started with the spare bedroom where Sandra slept. Her belongings were minimal, neatly organized. A few clothes in the closet, toiletries in the dresser. Nothing suspicious. Then I checked the drawer of her nightstand. Inside, I found a folder. And what I saw in that folder made my blood turn to ice. There were documents. Legal documents. A power of attorney form with my signature on it, except I had never signed any power of attorney. There was a copy of my will, the original one Margaret and I had drawn up years ago, but beside it was a second will, one I had never seen before. In this new will, I left everything to Sandra Thornton, the house, the savings, my pension. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. There was more. Bank statements showing withdrawals from my account, transfers I had never authorized, $30,000, gone to an account I didn't recognize. And at the bottom of the folder, a life insurance policy, a new one taken out 6 months ago, naming Sandra Thornton as the sole beneficiary. The policy was worth $300,000. I sat on the edge of her bed, the papers scattered around me, and I felt the world crack open beneath my feet. This woman had been planning to kill me, slowly, carefully, with pills that were designed to look like natural decline. And when I finally died, when my heart gave out from whatever poison she had been feeding me, she would collect everything. I gathered the documents, put them back exactly as I had found them, and went to the kitchen to wait for my son. David arrived just after 2 o'clock. He took one look at my face and knew something was terribly wrong. I told him everything. The dream, the pills, what I had found in Sandra's room. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each word. "Dad, we need to call the police." "I know, but I need proof first. Real proof. I need to know what's in those pills." David nodded. He had a friend from high school who worked as a pharmacist at the Shoppers Drug Mart in Kingston. "I'll take these to him tonight. He can run some tests." "But Dad, you can't stay here with her. It's not safe. If I leave, she'll know something is wrong. She might run, destroy the evidence." "Then what do you suggest?" I thought of Margaret, her strength, her practicality. What would she have done? "I suggest we be smart about this," I said. "Get the pills tested, find out exactly what we're dealing with, and then we'll decide our next move." David left with the pills, promising to call me as soon as he had results. I watched his truck disappear down the road, and then I went inside to wait for Sandra. She returned an hour later, arms full of grocery bags, her usual cheerful smile in place. "Harold, you're up and about. That's wonderful to see. You must be feeling better." "A bit," I said, forcing myself to smile back. "Thought I'd get some fresh air." She nodded, unpacking the groceries. "That's the spirit. Oh, I picked up your prescription refill while I was out. Dr. Lawson's office called it in." She held up a small white bag from the pharmacy. I felt my stomach turn. "Thank you," I managed. "You're always thinking of me." "Of course I am." She crossed the kitchen and patted my cheek, and it took every ounce of control I had not to recoil from her touch. "That's what I'm here for." That night, she brought me my pills as usual. I pretended to take them, hiding them in my palm, washing them down with water that I held in my mouth until she left. Then I spit everything into the toilet and flushed. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for morning. David called at 7 a.m. His voice was tense, controlled. "Dad, I've got the results. You need to sit down." I'm sitting. "The blue pills aren't vitamins. They contain digoxin, a heart medication that can be lethal in high doses. Given over time, it would cause the exact symptoms you've been experiencing: confusion, weakness, heart irregularities. Eventually, it would cause cardiac arrest." I closed my eyes. I had known it was bad, but hearing it confirmed was something else entirely. "There's more," David continued. "My friend recognized the compound. It's been modified slightly, probably to avoid detection in a standard autopsy. Someone with pharmaceutical knowledge put this together. This wasn't amateur work. What do we do now?" "I've already called the OPP. They're sending a detective to meet with us this afternoon." "Dad, you need to act completely normal until then." "Can you do that?" "I've been acting normal for days," I said. "I can manage a few more hours." The detective's name was Claire Dubois, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s from the Ontario Provincial Police's Criminal Investigation Unit. We met at David's friend's house in Kingston, away from Sandra's eyes and ears. I told her everything. The dream, the pills, the documents. I showed her the forged power of attorney, the fake will, the insurance policy. She examined each piece of evidence with growing concern. "Mr. McMillan," she said finally, "we've actually been investigating Sandra Thornton for the past 8 months. She's connected to at least 2 other deaths, both elderly men who died of apparent natural causes. Both had recently changed their wills to benefit her. Both had life insurance policies she collected on." I felt sick. "She's done this before?" "We believe so, but we've never been able to prove it. The victims were cremated, so there was no way to test for poison. You're the first one who's still alive to tell us what happened. What do you need me to do?" Detective Dubois leaned forward. "We need to catch her in the act. We need evidence that she's the one administering the poison. If you're willing, we'd like to set up surveillance in your home, hidden cameras, recording devices. And we need you to continue acting as if nothing has changed. You want me to keep living with a woman who's trying to kill me, only for a few more days. We'll have officers nearby at all times. The moment we have enough evidence, we'll move in." I thought about it. The risk was enormous, but so was the alternative, letting her walk away, letting her do this to someone else. "My birthday is in 3 days," I said. Sandra has been planning a dinner party. My children will be there. Some friends from the Legion. It would be the perfect opportunity for her to make her move. Detective Dubois nodded slowly. That's actually exactly what we were hoping for. These types of offenders often accelerate their timeline around significant events. If she thinks you're about to have a medical episode at your own birthday party, surrounded by witnesses who would attest to your declining health, it would look completely natural. Exactly. Are you willing to do this, Mr. Macmillan? I thought of Margaret. Her voice in my dream, urgent and afraid. She had reached across the barrier of death itself to warn me. I couldn't let that sacrifice be for nothing. Yes, I said. Let's end this. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Sandra seemed completely oblivious to any change in my behavior. She continued her routine, bringing me pills, preparing my meals, fussing over my health. I played my part, taking the pills when she watched, pretending to be weaker than I felt. Detective Dubois's team installed cameras throughout the house while Sandra was out shopping. Tiny devices hidden in smoke detectors, behind picture frames, in electrical outlets. Every room was covered. On the morning of my birthday, I woke to find Sandra already up, bustling around the kitchen. "Happy birthday, Harold," she sang out when I appeared in the doorway. "I've made your favorite, pancakes with real maple syrup." "Thank you," I said, sitting down at the table. She placed the plate in front of me, watching with that warm smile that I now knew was as false as everything else about her. "I've got a special surprise for tonight," she said. "I hope you'll like it." "I'm sure you do," I thought, but I smiled and nodded and ate my pancakes. David arrived at 4 o'clock with Melissa, who had flown in from Vancouver. Seeing my daughter was almost too much. She hugged me tight, and I had to blink back tears. "Dad, you look so much better than on our video calls," she whispered. "Sandra said you were doing worse." "We'll talk later," I murmured. "Just play along for now." Friends from the Legion came. Neighbors I hadn't seen in months. Sandra had organized everything beautifully. Decorations, a catered meal, a cake with 65 candles. She played the role of devoted caregiver to perfection, accepting compliments on how well she had taken care of me. "He's been having some difficult days," she told Muriel Peterson, my late wife's best friend. "But I think the worst is behind us now." I caught Detective Dubois' eye across the room. She had come in disguise, posing as the wife of one of the caterers. She gave me a slight nod. Dinner was served at 7. Sandra had insisted on a specific seating arrangement, placing herself next to me at the head of the table. The meal was elaborate: roast beef, mashed potatoes, glazed carrots, all my favorites. Sandra kept refilling my wine glass, kept offering me more food. I noticed she wasn't eating much herself, just watching me with those calculating eyes. Halfway through the meal, she leaned close and whispered, "I've got your evening pills here, Harold. You should take them with dinner." She pressed a small envelope into my hand under the table. I felt the capsules inside. "Thank you, dear," I said, loud enough for others to hear. "You always take such good care of me." I palmed the pills, pretending to swallow them with a sip of wine. Dessert came. Birthday cake, candles lit. Everyone sang. I blew out the candles, making a wish that Margaret could see what was about to happen. Sandra stood up, tapping her glass for attention. "If I could say a few words," she announced, her voice carrying across the room. "I've only known Harold for 6 months, but in that time, he's become like family to me. It's been my honor to care for him, to be here when he needed someone most." I watched her performance, marveling at how convincing she was, how easily the lies came. "To Harold," she raised her glass, "to many more years of health and happiness." Everyone drank, and then it was my turn. I stood up slowly, steadying myself on the table, playing the part of the frail old man one last time. "I'd like to say something as well," I began. "Sandra is right. These past 6 months, she's been by my side every day. She's managed my medications, handled my affairs, taken care of everything." Sandra beamed, nodding along. "In fact," I continued, "she's done so much that I thought everyone here should know exactly what she's been up to." Her smile faltered slightly. "Harold, you don't need to." "Oh, but I do. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope of pills she had just given me. These, for example. Sandra has been giving me these vitamin supplements every single night for months. But they're not vitamins, are they, Sandra? The color drained from her face. Harold, I don't know what you're talking about. They contain digoxin, I said, my voice growing stronger. A heart medication. In the doses you've been giving me, it was slowly poisoning me, causing the confusion, the weakness, the heart problems my doctor couldn't explain. Gasps rippled through the room. David stepped closer, positioning himself between Sandra and the door. "This is ridiculous," Sandra sputtered. "He's confused. It's his condition." "My condition that you created." I pulled out the folder I had retrieved from my hiding place earlier that evening, and these documents. A power of attorney I never signed. A will leaving everything to you. Bank transfers emptying my accounts. A life insurance policy worth $300,000. Sandra's composure cracked completely. She looked around the room, at the shocked faces, at the doors blocked by my son and the caterer who was already moving toward her. "You were going to let me die at my own birthday party," I said, surrounded by friends and family who would all swear they saw a sick old man have a heart attack. The perfect crime. "You can't prove any of this," she hissed, her mask finally slipping. "Actually," Detective Dubois stepped forward, badge now visible. "We can. We have video recordings of you administering the poison. We have lab results confirming what was in those pills. And we have testimony linking you to 2 other deaths." 2 OPP officers appeared at the front door. Sandra looked around wildly, then made a break for the back. David was faster. He caught her arm, spun her around. She fought like a trapped animal, scratching, biting, screaming. It took both officers to restrain her, to get the handcuffs on her wrists. "You should have died," she spat at me as they dragged her toward the door. "You were supposed to die, just like the others." "But I didn't," I said quietly, "because my wife warned me. Even from the grave, she protected me." They took her away, and the room erupted in chaos. Friends surrounded me, asking questions, offering support. My daughter clung to my arm, crying. My son stood with his hand on my shoulder, solid as a rock. Later, after everyone had gone, after the police had finished their interviews and the house had fallen silent, I sat on the back porch and looked up at the stars. Detective Dubois had told me they found evidence linking Sandra to 4 deaths across 3 provinces. 4 elderly men, all widowers, all with substantial assets. She had been doing this for years, moving from province to province, changing her name, perfecting her technique. I was the first one who had survived. Because of Margaret. Because of a dream that shouldn't have been possible. Because my wife loved me enough to reach across whatever barrier exists between this world and the next. I lifted my coffee cup to the sky. "Thank you, sweetheart," I whispered. "I heard you. I listened." The wind rustled through the bare branches of the maple tree Margaret had planted when David was born. It sounded almost like a sigh, like relief. The trial took place 8 months later. Sandra Thornton was convicted of attempted murder in my case, and second-degree murder in 2 others. The judge sentenced her to life in prison, with no possibility of parole, for 25 years. I attended every day of the trial, sitting in the front row. When the verdict was read, she turned and looked at me with pure hatred in her eyes. I met her gaze without flinching. She had taken everything from other families. She had tried to take everything from mine, but she had failed. And now she would spend the rest of her life paying for her crimes. After the trial, I made some changes. I sold the house in Carlton Place. Too many memories, good and bad. I moved to Kingston to be closer to David and his family. Bought a small condo near the waterfront where I could watch the boats on Lake Ontario. Melissa came to visit for 3 weeks that summer. We finally took that trip to the Maritimes, the one Margaret and I had always talked about. We drove the Cabot Trail, ate lobster in Halifax, stood at Peggy's Cove watching the waves crash against the rocks. At each stop, I felt Margaret with me, not in dreams anymore, but in the warmth of the sun on my face, in the cry of the gulls, in the salt smell of the ocean she had always loved. I started going to a grief support group. It helped to talk about what I had experienced, to help others who were going through their own darkness. I told my story again and again, and each time, someone would come up to me afterward with tears in their eyes, thanking me for reminding them to trust their instincts. On the first anniversary of my 65th birthday, David and Melissa threw me a party. Nothing elaborate, just family. My 2 grandchildren ran around the backyard while we ate hamburgers and corn on the cob. After the kids were in bed, we sat on the porch watching the sun set over the lake. "Dad," Melissa said quietly, "do you really believe it was Mom, in the dream?" I thought about it for a long moment. "I don't know how to explain it," I said finally. "I'm not a religious man. You kids know that. I've never believed in ghosts or spirits or any of that. But what I felt that night, the clarity of her voice, the certainty in her words," I shook my head. "I don't know what it was. But I know what it did. It saved my life." David nodded slowly. "Mom always did have good instincts. Remember how she knew Aunt Linda's second husband was trouble before anyone else?" We laughed at the memory. Margaret had taken one look at the man and declared him a snake. She was right. He cleared out Linda's savings and disappeared 3 years later. "She was watching out for you, Dad," Melissa said. "Same as she always did." "I think she was," I agreed. "And I think she's still watching." I looked up at the evening star, just visible above the horizon. Venus, Margaret had called it. She used to point it out every clear night, the first star of evening. "I'm doing okay, sweetheart," I whispered, too quiet for the kids to hear. "I'm living. I'm happy. You can rest now." The star seemed to twinkle a little brighter for just a moment. Probably just my old eyes playing tricks. Probably just the atmosphere, the moisture in the air. But I chose to believe it was her. One final signal, one last message of love. That's my story. I'm 66 years old now, still living in that condo in Kingston, still watching the boats on the lake. I visit Margaret's grave every Sunday, tell her about my week, about the grandkids, about the sunset I saw on Thursday. I've learned some things in the past year. I've learned that grief can make us vulnerable, but it can also make us strong. I've learned that evil exists in the most ordinary-looking packages, but so does love. I've learned that the people we lose never truly leave us, not if we keep them in our hearts. And I've learned to listen to that quiet voice in the back of your mind, the one that whispers something isn't right, to the dreams that feel too real to be just dreams, to the love that reaches across impossible distances to protect us. If you're listening to this and you feel that whisper, that warning, don't ignore it. Don't brush it off as imagination or paranoia or old age. Trust yourself. Trust the people who love you, even if they're no longer here. Because sometimes the most important messages come from the places we least expect. If my story resonated with you, send a like so I know you're with me. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Drop a comment and let's connect. And if you want to help me keep sharing these stories of survival and justice, even a small donation makes a huge difference. It keeps this channel going and lets me bring you new stories every week. For more stories like this one, check out the other videos on my channel and subscribe. On the screen right now, you'll see 2 more stories I think you'll enjoy. Click one and start listening. Until next time, friends, stay safe, trust your instincts, and never forget that love doesn't end with death. It just finds new ways to reach us.